Love or loathe it, improvisation as a tool helps performers breathe life into their respective art forms. From the notes not played in jazz to the happy little accidents in Bob Ross. The world would be dull without those maverick moments in an otherwise technically demanding outlet. And of course, actors are known for taking things into their own hands.
You'll see, when you see the movie, it'll make sense.
So be prepared, because we're about to detail 10 moments the cast goes off script in Stranger Things. Joyce and Hopper's kiss couldn't have come soon enough. Their reunion is unfortunately cut short, as escaping Russia tends to be rather difficult in the 80s. But we're absolutely blessed with a second kiss before Hopper goes off to save the day. Joyce's plea for him not to have a second funeral pulls the heartstrings. It crescendos into an emotional chorus with their kiss, a choice made by David Harbour and Winona Ryder on set. The feeling of natural escalation in their relationship throughout seasons 3 and 4 could not have had a better end than an improvised kiss. This is a technique that we'll see a lot of. However, we should not downplay the talent and dedication involved in these decisions. Years of portraying another person can lead to a distaste or even hatred of the persona. Take Robert Pattinson in Twilight, leaving the role for good. Not to say that the Batboy turned Batman is not a phenomenal actor, but to play any role where you're expected to portray personal and interpersonal growth realistically, in proportion to the amount of fictional time your character has been through, is more than draining on the creative spirit. So, the consistency and understanding that Winona and David have in this false relationship is nothing short of admirable. This sort of improvising has a very potent factor that is birthed from this talent and dedication, one this show is uniquely abundant of. Season 4 ends with some of the hardest scenes to witness, but with heartache and horror comes intensification of character and performance. For instance, Luca's cry for Erica, holding the mangled and blinded Max, was entirely improvised by Caleb McLaughlin in the moment of filming. A decision that only made the scene that much harder to endure with dry eyes, and we can't thank him enough for it. But why does this ad-lib hurt as much as it does? Is it the acting? Is it the simplicity of the cry for help? Or is it simply because it feels so real? What makes any acting decision effective is a complicated topic, but it can't hurt to try. I think that it's a mix of the three, plus that secret fourth factor that I mentioned earlier. Even if Mr. McLaughlin hadn't have been the amazing actor that he is, or his cries had been played out, or if it just felt forced in any way, the risk of these moments is a possible candidate. Risk on behalf of the actor and crew. The risk to allow something unrehearsed and untested. Or have we just uncovered a deeper truth? It would take a heartless beast not to be moved by Eddie's sacrifice in the end, a death worthy of Valhalla itself, but Joseph Quinn only deepened the wound with his last words. In a dying breath, he is confident that it will finally be his year. He accompanies this sentiment with his ad-libbed,
"I love you, Dad."
And like the great Han Solo before him, Eddie sleeps that long slumber with a finale rockin' line. Now, let's lighten the mood. When things are tense, it is a natural response to try and insert humor. And while this can be seen as forced, a la Jar Jar Binks, a great example of comedy being used to cut the tension can be found in Season 2, Episode 6. When asking Jonathan about the pull-out couch, Murray drops a good amount of eggs on his lap. Then, in a Who's Line-esque stroke of genius, sheepishly says,
"Oops."
This entire scene was written to be as awkward as possible, as mornings after licentious nights tend to be. But Brett Gelman's spontaneous playfulness catapulted this scene from moist levels of disturbing to absolute hilarity. Comedy is like a frog. The moment that you open it up and see how it works, it stops. So get out your comedy scalpel because we've got a live one. There's a theory of comedy known as the relief theory. The idea that comedy is transactional in a way. That tension buildup in life and comedy is caused by someone reliving it for you. Laughter is what you give them in return. And while debate is never over with these topics, it can give an insight as to how scenes and improvs like this work. The first pun on the couch line is meant to be the relief of this scene, adding a tension that's built up. However, it did the opposite, moving humor out of the story and onto the audience. It's funny because they are uncomfortable. The mistake of the eggs dropping accidentally brought it back into the reality of the story. And the oops was the perfect line to break the tension once more, and another example of this special sauce that Stranger Things is slathered in. Every first kiss is hard to forget. It'd be even harder if it were filmed and a beloved scene for millions. And that's exactly the case for Sadie Sink. She plays Max, and the first kiss for her and Caleb McLaughlin's character Lucas was, in reality, her actual first kiss. A kiss that was improvised by the writer Ross Duffer, no doubt. That's right, this was not scripted at all. In fact, it was done almost entirely because Sadie seemed uncomfortable with the idea on set when she arrived for the day.
Yeah, that was it. It's amazing to just kind of like, you know, be with one of your best friends in this amazing 80s decked out gym. So I think kind of cool. I'm not mad at it.
This works to demonstrate the difference between an unplanned scene and an improvised decision on the actor's behalf. Max's and Caleb's relationship is wonderful, but this forced romantic gesture doesn't hold the same weight as Caleb's cry for help in season 4, where one was sprung on a young actor to get a genuine reaction, the other was a knee-jerk response to a fictional stake. There is a disparity in a way that will become clear soon. Escalation is a useful and oft-forgotten tool in improvising. Going off the cuff with a fellow actor can lead to a bold but predictable response. A great example of bold improvising that furthers the feeling of the scene is when Billy grabs Max's arm.
What would I ever do without
you? Completely off book, but pulls us into their complex relationship, making his death all that more tragic. A fine piece of improv and a wonderfully intense moment. That intensity is emblematic of the balancing act that these performers must do every second that they're in front of the camera, keeping tensions high, but not bogging down a scene with constant emoting of negativity. As an audience member, these physical breaks in conversations act as a relief in the tension, and that's what I call a callback. Season 3 started off with a bang. Eleven and Mike are broken up by Hopper's meddling, and the friendship doesn't survive the breakup.
I dump your ass.
So, when Mike fumbles over his words confessing his love for Eleven, it is both touching and jovial, helped by the fact that it was entirely made up on the spot by Finn Wolfhard.
You never heard that term? You know, like the phrase, like, blank makes you crazy, like the word.
Eleven's reactions were entirely candid as Millie tried to stay in the scene. A harsh contrast to the previous unplanned romance, where both actors are just speaking their character's truth and reacting to each other. What's the difference? Why is this an adorable, relatable scene, and the last less effective? Respective character screen time put aside, these last 3 entries are representative of this difference. Dedication is one of the most admirable traits in any actor. Dacre Montgomery smashing his head through the sauna window because that is what a process Billy would do? That is far beyond just dedication, especially since it was entirely unscripted. Oh yeah, and despite the fact the cast was horrified, which would look great on screen, the take was sadly not used. Imagine the mindset that you must be in to be able to commit to an action as hard as he did, to only not have it be used at all. He's playing an intensely complex character on top of being possessed by a villain beyond human understanding. To keep everything consistent and present in the moment reveals where you go next in the scene, and unfortunately for Mr. Montgomery's head, it's through a glass window. Take after take after take can be very exhausting on an actor. So, when Eleven collapses in the very same scene, it's actually just Millie being driven to her absolute limit. Mike's flabbergasted response is the look of a co-star who was not expecting to be holding his counterpart on the floor. Last on the list is the iconic Eggo scene, where Millie Bobby Brown decided that Eleven needed much more waffles than the script called for. The rest is history. It set a tone for the show that was distinct and firm. These are dedicated individuals who understand their characters. As playful as it was, it reveals just how much the actors have fallen in love with their roles. Acting is more than just reacting. It involves decisions that your character would do that are beyond the words on the page, a theme that we've carried throughout in all of these examples. Stranger Things has been woven into our collective hearts over the past 6 years. We've watched these actors mold themselves to their roles for the better part of a decade now. Every ad-lib and impromptu heartbreak just grows and deepens the reality of Hawkins. And I'm sure we'll see even more growth and depth from the group in season 5 to come.